going to introduce Stacy. And then just, since you're here, watch the chat and the Q&A and make sure that they can hear me. Join you real quick. Good evening, everybody, and welcome into the Schomburg Library. My name is Chris. I'm your Adult Programs Coordinator here at the library. I'm so excited to be spending another evening with y'all here in person and our at-home audience as well for some Social Security information. Before we get started and into the meat of the presentation, just a few friendly reminders for our in-person and at-home audience. For our in-person audience, if you can take a moment to silence your cell phones and any other electronic device that may make noise during the presentation, lights and sounds emitted by those devices are distracting to your fellow patrons and the presenter. If you need a restroom, they're located straight out this door. Women's is directly on your left, gentlemen's is a little further down, and there's a water fountain in between as well. All three of these doors are unlocked, so you can use any to come in and out as you need to during the program. If you have any questions for the presenter, we'll take those at the end. And for Q&A for this, if you can put your hand high in the air, I have a microphone so that our online audience can hear, so that way they can hear your question. I'll just run it over to you. I'll have unclipped it. Don't worry, I'm not gonna lean into your personal space. Just hold the microphone under you, Oprah style, so they can hear what your wonderful questions are at home. Now for our online audience, if you have questions, you can use the Q&A function on your Zoom toolbar. You can submit questions throughout, but just like our in-person audience, we'll take those questions at the end. If you're experiencing technical difficulties during the presentation, also use the Q&A to reach out to me. It's the best way for me to be able to go back and forth with you and help with any issue you might be having. You'll also notice that closed captions have been enabled for your comfort, and you can turn those on or off as you wish using your Zoom toolbar. Now, I've taken up more than enough of everyone's time, so without further ado, I would like to introduce this evening's speaker, Stacy Bromann. Stacy is a wealth advisor at the Dala Group and often serves as the first point of contact for new clients. She's a graduate of Iowa State University and has 2 decades of experience in the financial service industry with a passion for helping clients navigate the complexities of retirement planning. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to Stacy.
Thank you so much, Chris. And thank you guys so much for coming out tonight too. We're gonna talk a lot about Social Security. I will obviously make it fun. We'll also make it informative, and then you guys can get back out to this beautiful weather that we're having, since it seems like it's been such a long time coming. I do apologize, my voice is a little hoarse today. I've got some seasonal allergies going on, so if you need me to speak up, just let me know. But we're going to talk about Social Security. I always like to start the presentation by just telling a little bit more about myself and why I chose to become a financial planner. So I start with the picture on the right. I am the little girl in the red dress sitting on my mom's lap, and then there's my dad, my mom, my dad, my brother, and my sister. And my financial story really starts back from when I was a child. My parents did everything right, or at least so we thought. They paid their bills, they saved, they had life insurance. They thought they had everything kind of planned out. I was born in the 1980s. I was born actually in 1980. And my dad was a farmer. So I was born kind of in the middle of the farm crisis, and money was always a really sensitive subject. But again, my parents had a plan, right? Unfortunately, the advice that they took was just not what I would ever give to my clients. But my mom stayed home with us, and so they didn't really have a lot of life insurance on my mom because they didn't need to replace her income, right? Unfortunately for us, my mom was the one that got sick. She got sick with cancer when I was about 9.5 and passed away just before I turned 11. And she spent the last 2 weeks of her life in the hospital, and it just absolutely devastated us financially. Obviously, my dad didn't work as much during that time, and it just was a real absolute setback as they were starting to kind of come out of that financial crisis with the farm crisis. But anyway, the $40,000 that they had was not enough. They did pay the bills that had accumulated and everything like that, but there really wasn't much left after that. And I know my dad did not share that information with me when I was 11, but he did share that information with me when I married my husband. So my husband and I have been married for just about 22 years. And when we started, I was in the financial services industry, but wasn't quite a financial planner yet. And we were looking at life insurance for ourselves. And my dad was always my go-to person. He was always the one that I went to with all of my big life questions, because he was just my mom was as well, but he was just so amazing and so level-headed. And he told me, let me tell you what not to do. And that made such an impact on me. He shared obviously the stresses that then he went through, and I knew that it was stressful financially after my mom passed away, but I didn't know the impact of everything. And so that just made such a big impression on me. Obviously, I always want to do my best for my family as well, but we treat our clients like they are a part of our family. And so the financial planning that we do as a group is just so important because I want to make sure that the families that we help make better informed decisions than my family did at the time. But anyway, so that's a little bit more about me. We're going to talk a little bit more about Social Security today too. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the Social Security presentation, just want to tell you a little bit about the folder that I gave you as you came in. So there's quite a lot to go around in there. This first piece right here is a Social Security quick reference guide. So it's got full retirement age or dates of full retirement age or your age. It's got cost of living adjustments. It's got average monthly Social Security benefits, just a whole bunch of really good information. There's a front and back on that one that you will most likely refer to throughout the presentation. This is a comment card. We will talk about a complimentary consultation at the end. If you are interested in that, you will fill that out and give that back to me. There's just a blank page for taking notes. There's also a pamphlet that just tells you a little bit more about our firm and how we work with our clients. And then this card right here is with the QR code, actually has a recording in this very library, one of my first presentations back in the October of 23, before all of this beautiful construction. So it has a lot of, so anyway, so that's the folder, this QR code though. So if you have friends or family that weren't able to attend tonight, but wanted a little bit more information about Social Security, or if you just want to see this information twice, because we will cover quite a lot, that is your opportunity to either share or take advantage of a replay. But we are going to talk tonight about Social Security in all its glory, if you will. We're going to talk about the future of Social Security. We're going to look at a Social Security statement. We're going to explore filing strategies for individuals, couples, divorced individuals, as well as survivors. We'll talk about retroactive benefits. We'll talk about penalties for working while collecting Social Security, and everyone's favorite, taxation. So let's first start with Social Security's outlook. I know that that's really been a hot topic recently, so let's talk about it. So currently, as it stands today, Social Security has enough funds in its reserves, if you will, to pay out 100% of scheduled benefits until 2033. When I graduated from college in 2003, I thought 2033 was like light years, right? I was like, we're gonna have flying cars, we're gonna have like the Jetson maid, you know, like all that kind of stuff. Well, we have robotic vacuums, we don't have flying cars, and it's only 8 years from now. My youngest will be in college in 2033, which is absolutely insane, which just kind of brings to light the fact that the funding we need to shore up the funding and also probably make some changes to the structure of Social Security. But one of the reasons that the funding, that it's not as funded as it used to be, is how many workers contribute to the pot, if you will, for Social Security. So back in 1950, there were 16.5 workers contributing to the pot of Social Security for every one person receiving benefits. If we fast forward to 2 years ago, in 2023, there were 2.7 workers that were receiving or paying into the benefits for every one person that was receiving. And they estimate that in 2035, it will be 2.4 workers for every one person, or that are paying in benefits for every one person that's receiving benefits. So as you can tell, the workforce has changed significantly. Obviously, another contributing factor is longevity. People are living longer. And then obviously you've got like disability factors and things like that in there as well that contribute to the difference of people contributing versus not. But obviously, knowing that that's going to be the case, we do need to make some changes. And I think the biggest thing that we can take away from this is that we need to let our elected officials know that Social Security is very important to all of us, and that we need to make sure that it will be healthy much beyond 2033. Now, with that being said, Social Security isn't going to run out in 2033. They're just going to reduce the benefits because the money that goes in would be the same money that comes out if they don't change some things with Social Security. So what they expect is that benefits, if there aren't any changes, that benefits would reduce by 20 to 25% for those receiving benefits. So it is impactful. But again, I think that there's time that they're going to be making some changes, and we can obviously encourage our elected officials to make those changes sooner than later. But let's look at who's eligible for Social Security. So, and how you become eligible, so there's 4 different ways. The most common is to be a worker who has accumulated a minimum of 40 work credits. They also call it 40 quarters. A work credit is, in 2025, you earn 1 work credit for every $1,810 that you earn. That is the equivalent of 1 credit or 1 quarter, and you can earn a maximum of 4 per year. So if your earnings are beyond $7,240 for the year, you have already earned your 4 quarters. You cannot earn more than that in a year, but essentially then, if you have 40 work credits, that means that you've worked full-time, quote unquote, or had consistent work for at least 10 years. So that is the minimum qualification, but then beyond that, we're looking at how your benefit is calculated. So your benefit is based on an average of the highest 35 years of earnings in which the worker paid payroll taxes. So obviously, if you're looking at someone that's filing for Social Security between the ages of 62 and 70, most of the time, they've actually worked beyond those 35 years. So in that case, if you've got earnings, if you've got 40 years of earnings or 45 years of earnings, you will just take those lower earning years out of the equation, and your benefit would be the highest 35 years of earnings again. If you do not have 35 years of earnings, then obviously your average would just have some zeros in it, which would obviously affect your monthly payment a little bit as well. The next way that you would qualify for benefits is if you were the spouse of an eligible worker. So if you were a stay-at-home parent or something along those lines, and you were not working, as long as your spouse was, you would still qualify for spousal benefits then. An ex-spouse is not counted out in this situation either. An ex-spouse who was married at least 10 years to an eligible worker would be eligible for ex-spousal benefits. And then last but not least would be a surviving spouse. So again, if your spouse qualified on their own and you didn't, but they've passed away, you would get the survivor benefit then rather than the ex-spouse or the spousal benefit. So the next thing that we always like to take a look at is the statement of Social Security. Has everybody seen their statement recently? Yeah? Okay. You have it along. I love it. So if you haven't, if you go to ssa.gov, you can actually sign up to get this online statement. If you don't have it electronically, your statement will look a little bit different, but they're really trying to encourage everyone to get online at this point. But if you don't, you can go to ssa.gov again and look at that statement. We are going to be focusing on this main area right here, which is kind of the meat and potatoes of your actual retirement benefits. So the first thing that we look at, again, is the first sentence, which says you have earned enough credits to qualify for retirement benefits. That means that this worker has more than 40 credits and they qualify already for those Social Security benefits. The next thing that we want to look at is this, we can kind of skip this sentence, but this one, your full retirement age is on the date of April 5th, 1962. So in that quick reference guide, you would see that anyone's birthday that was before 1954, their full retirement age was actually 66. 1954 through 1960, it goes every 2 months. Anybody born after 1960, their full retirement age is going to be 67. But this obviously states with this worker, 1962, their full retirement age is 67. It is good though, just to make sure that the birth date in there is correct, because we don't want any mistakes or anything like that. So it's always good to just verify that. Then the next sentence, also super important. It just kind of goes on to discuss that you can file between the ages of 62 and 70, which I kind of already said. Each year or each month that you file early, or each year for that matter, you are taking a reduction in your benefit. However, each year that you file, if you delay filing, you are getting an increase in your benefit, which you can see in this chart listed above. So again, their full retirement age being 67, their benefit would be $2,119 monthly. Each month or each year that they file early, you're taking a 6% reduction in benefits, which is going to be a permanent then. If you file at 62, your benefit's going to be $1,465 per month. Obviously with cost of living increases and things like that, but it is not going to change from there. It does not change once you reach your full retirement age. You say, this is my benefit at 62 and that's what I'm going to receive. You can also delay filing, and if you delay, your benefit actually increases about 8% yearly, which can obviously also be very impactful. The next thing that we want to look at is this last paragraph. So these personalized estimates are based on your earnings to date and assume that you would continue to earn, in this worker's case, $54,489 per year until you start your benefits. Why that is important is because they're assuming that you're still working, so you're still contributing. So especially if you are a worker that does not have those full 35 years of earnings, if you would discontinue work but not start your Social Security benefit immediately, there's going to be zeros in those earnings years versus having those earnings in there. So that could actually affect your calculation. So if you're online, you can actually click on that hyperlink, and you can actually manipulate those dollars or those figures in the website. So maybe instead of working full-time, maybe you're working part-time, or you would have a zero in there. It would adjust those numbers if that would be impactful for you. A lot of times if you've got more than 35 years, it might affect it a few dollars, but it wouldn't be super substantial. However, if you've got like 10 or 15 years of earnings and you would have that break, it would obviously make more of an impact in that manner. Any questions? No? Okay. So the next thing that we want to look at, this is page 2, and this is your earnings record, which is also super important because you want to make sure that it's accurate. So with this worker, we can see that the first 3 decades are truncated because there would be, nobody would be able to read it if we were looking at 50 years of earnings. But so the first is truncated, but we do see that every year is populated with a number. And in this worker's case, the numbers are steadily increasing, which would indicate that they've gotten raises along the way and things like that. Obviously, with the exception of 2008, we're looking at essentially steady increases. So we want to make sure that everything is accurate with this. If there are zeros, we want to make sure that those are accurate and that we weren't actually working that year. If there's a zero that shouldn't be there, we would obviously want to get that corrected as quickly as possible so that we make sure that those numbers, again, are accurate. How you correct that is by providing your tax return to the Social Security Administration. So it's important that you keep up with it, because if it is wrong, I wouldn't want to be trying to dispute something from 2001 because I probably don't have my taxes anymore. So it's super important just to keep an eye on those things to make sure that it's accurate so that you can dispute it in a timely fashion. So we talked about Social Security, or I talked about Social Security strategies. So we're going to start with individual strategies because obviously individual is just a little bit easier to take a look at. Then we'll talk about married couples, divorced individuals, as well as survivors. So filing strategies for individuals. As you can tell, and as we looked at the first screen with the 62 through 70, delaying your benefit obviously results in a larger dollar amount on a monthly basis, right? However, we want to take a look at what the impact of those dollars that we left on the table, so to speak, how much is that, and what do I have to overcome if I'm taking my benefits later? So this worker, I want to point out this worker's full retirement age is 66, which means that they were born before 1954. But this worker, if they start collecting at 62, they're going to collect $1,500 a month, or $1,500 monthly. Per year, if we take 1,500 times 12, that's $18,000 a year, which is a pretty good chunk of money, right? I wouldn't say no to that. Typically, if someone offered me $18,000, I probably wouldn't say no, right? But is it the best option for me, or should I wait? So we're gonna look at how much I'm leaving behind if I choose to delay until 66. So $1,500 a month, $18,000 a year times 4 years, I would be leaving $72,000 on the table by not claiming my benefit until 66. That's a lot of money, right? $72,000, I could pay a lot of bills with $72,000. However, if I wait until 66, I'm getting $500 more a month. $6,000 more a year is a lot, right? Especially in retirement when I'm not working as much. So how much am I earning? So I'm earning $24,000 a year, or $6,000 annually more than if I claimed at 62. So that $6,000 annual difference, how long does it take me to make that up for the $72,000 that I just left behind? Takes me about 12 years. So if I delay my benefit until 66, I essentially have to live until at least 78, at which time I've broken even, and anything beyond that is extra money that I will then collect for the rest of my life. So that's obviously our first starting off point. Then we are going to go and take that calculation to the next level and say, what is it going to be if I wait until 70? So $2,000 a month, or $24,000 a year, times the next 4 years is $96,000. Again, that's a good amount of money. I would collect $96,000 between ages 66 to 70, but if I delayed and waited until 70, I'm getting a good amount of money more each month. That $640 more each month, that yearly would be $7,640. How long does it take me to overcome what I'm leaving behind here? It's 96,000 divided by 7,640, that's 12.56 years. So it's a little over 12 years, but that means that as a 70-year-old, I need to live until at least 82 and a half, almost 83, but then again, anything then that I would collect beyond that is again bonus for me, right? If we look at just these straight numbers, I think everyone would say, why wouldn't you wait until 70, right? But then we think about longevity, health, other money that I might have to be able to draw from. All of those different things also play a factor. So that's the first thing that we start looking at for individuals is, like, what's the benefit? What are we leaving behind? What other funds do we have? All of those different things. So that's kind of the starting off point. And that's why we start with individuals, because it's obviously looking just at one thing. Because then when we bring married couples into the conversation, married individuals can either file for their own benefit or file for spousal benefits. You cannot file for both. It's either going to be one or the other. So in couples where they both work, the higher earning individual obviously files for their own benefits. The lower earning spouse could file for spousal benefits depending on whether or not that's going to be a benefit for them, or they could also file for their own benefits. So we're going to take a look at that and see what that looks like. So in this example, we have Tom and Mary. Tom is 3 years older, but they both qualify for their own benefit. Tom's at full retirement age again, so he is born before 1954. Tom's full retirement age benefit would be $2,500 a month, while Mary's would be $1,200 a month. So she does qualify on her own. However, obviously their earnings were significantly different during their lifetimes. So what does Mary file for? Does she file for her own, or does she file for spousal? Let's take a look. So we want to talk about spousal benefits. So there are some qualifications for spousal benefits. The first is that you must be age 62 or older to qualify. The second, you must have been married for at least 1 year. So no shotgun Social Security weddings. You have to have been married for at least a year. This is a really big one. Your spouse must first file for Social Security benefits. So if my spouse waits until 70, but I want to file at 62, I have to qualify on my own because my spouse won't have filed yet. This one is also super important. If claimed at your full retirement age, the spousal benefit would be 1/2 of the spouse's full retirement age benefit. But that leads us to this asterisk at the bottom. The spousal benefit is permanently reduced if you claim it before reaching full retirement age. So just like if an individual claims at 62, you're taking that 30% reduction if your full retirement age is 67, the same is for the spousal benefit. So you first take 1/2 of the spouse's benefit, and then you still take that reduction of 6% each year that you are filing before the full retirement age. So it really does, you really have to think about whether that makes sense for your situation. In some cases it does, in some it doesn't, but we're gonna take a look at it. And Tom and Mary have a good example because she actually does qualify, or she would benefit from the spousal benefit because her own benefit is not quite half of Tom's. So again, Tom's full retirement age benefit is $2,500 a month. Mary's is $1,200, but if she waits until her full retirement age, she'll get that $50 a month bump to the $1,250, which is again a little bit better than her own benefit. So we're going to take a look at some scenarios to see what that's going to look like for them. Since Tom is a few years older, his waiting until 70 is impactful for Mary, but not crazy impactful. But if he waits to file until 70, he's going to get an 8% increase for each year that he delays, which means that his benefit would be about $3,300 a month. If Mary files at her full retirement age, she's going to start out with $1,200 monthly because, again, Tom hasn't filed yet, so she qualifies for her own benefit. And then once Tom turns his benefit on, she will get the full retirement age benefit times 50%, so half, which means that she'll then bump up to the $1,250 each month, each year going forward. So she does not get the spousal benefit when she files at her full retirement age, but once Tom files, then she does. So for them, again, for her, it's $50 a month, so it's not super crazy, but it's still a benefit and it still is better for her that way. Any questions?
So if he collects at his retirement, he will get his full, and then she can collect a spousal Social Security off of him. Now, when she reaches her full retirement, can she switch over to hers, whichever one is higher?
So I'm going to repeat that question. So she's asking if he collects at his full retirement age, can she collect her own and then switch? I don't remember the name of what you're talking about. I don't remember what it's called because they phased it out. In 2015 or 2016, they made some changes. It's not file and suspend, but there is something along those lines that you used to be able to claim a spousal benefit and then switch over to your own, but they eliminated that for anyone that was born after 1954. So she cannot claim a spousal benefit and then switch over to her own. Because she started with her own and she qualifies on her own, she takes that one first, and then once Tom files, she gets the benefit of the spousal, but it's not a both and.
So she can't, at her full retirement age, say, I don't want Tom's, I want mine because mine
is higher. So it's a black and white. If you benefit from your own benefit, even if you file early, if your benefit is greater than 50% of your spouse's benefit, you just get your own benefit. Like, you don't get to file the spousal and then pop up to your own because it wouldn't make sense. You would just be better off with your own benefit. We're gonna take the next scenario. So Tom and Mary, again, Tom decides to file at 62. So he's gonna take that 6% reduction for each year that he's filing early, which means he's taking 24% of his. He's collecting $1,800 a month. Mary decides that she is going to stay the course and not file until she is 66, which means that she's at her full retirement age. Because she waited until the full retirement age and Tom already started collecting, she's going to collect the full spousal benefit, which is, again, 50% of his full retirement age benefit, even though his benefit, because he's filed early, is only $1,800 a month. She does not take 50% of that. She takes 50% of his full retirement age benefit. And if you were thinking along those lines, I saw some ahas and some light bulbs. I'm sure there were some questions, why wasn't she getting half of this, of the 3,300? Because she is taking, the spousal benefit does not continue to accumulate after the full retirement age. So the spousal benefit is 50% of the spousal, or of the full retirement age benefit, period, end of story. So even if she waited until 70, if she waited until 70 to file, she would actually be better off on her own benefit than that, because she's gonna get that 6% a year increase. Now, the last thing, or really last possible scenario, is what happens if they just file at the same time. So Tom's gonna file at 66, his full retirement age, totally fine, he's gonna get his full $2,500 a month. Mary, as we can tell, is filing those 3 years early though. So she's still gonna take the spousal benefit, because the spousal benefit is better than her own. She is gonna file 3 years early, which means she's taking an 18% reduction off the full retirement age spousal benefit. So it's 18% minus the $1,250, which is about $1,025 a year. Her own benefit would be like $1,010 a month or something like that. But so in this case, the spousal benefit does benefit her because she's taking it early, but he's already filed, so she qualifies for the spousal. So I'm getting some nods, so I feel like we're all on the same page. Okay, so ex-spousal benefits. Very, very similar to the spousal benefit with a few different changes. So the impact of divorce, I know that we've all, if we have not personally experienced it, we know someone in our close circle that has experienced divorce. As a divorced spouse, you may still be entitled to Social Security benefits based on your ex's work record. So very similar to spousal benefits with a few different changes. So for ex-spousal, you have to have been married for at least 10 years. If you were married for 9 years to your ex-spouse, unfortunately, you do not qualify for ex-spousal benefits. Then you would only qualify for current spousal benefits if you're remarried, or your own benefits at that time. You have to be unmarried. The filer has to be unmarried when they are filing for ex-spousal benefits. What that means is if you've gotten remarried, you can't be remarried at the time that you're filing. And I know that sounds really odd, like why would you point that out? Some people have been married for more than 10 years, more than once. So if you are unmarried at the time of filing, but you have more than one ex-spouse that you would qualify for ex-spousal benefits from, you actually get the benefit of the highest benefit. Probably, like I don't know that it happens a lot, but I think you could probably have 3 10-year marriages. If you got married like 18, 19, 20, and you were filing for benefits at full retirement age, you probably could have 3 in there. But so if you are unmarried at the time of filing, you actually do get to, you get the benefit of the highest benefit. But this is also super important. I skipped over it, but we're gonna come back. You have to be 62 years or older, and your ex-spouse also has to be 62 years or older. So if there's an age gap where one spouse is over 62, but the other is still in their 50s, you cannot qualify for ex-spousal benefits until the filer is also over 62, or if the case of the filer being the older one, the younger spouse has to pop up over 62 as well. They don't have to have filed though, which is super important. In an ex-spousal situation, because there are some spiteful situations as well as some amicable situations, they take the drama out of the spiteful, like contentious divorces. They do not make that spouse, the ex-spouse, file for Social Security. As long as they're both 62 years or older, the filer can file as long as, again, they were married for at least 10 years, they're both over 62, and the filer is unmarried. It doesn't matter even if the ex has remarried. It's all inconsequential. As long as those 3 categories are met, the filer can file regardless. Going back to the question that she asked earlier though, if your own benefit, like if you worked but just didn't make as much money as the ex-spouse, but your benefit, your full benefit is better than half of your ex-spouse's benefit, it does not benefit you to do the ex-spousal benefit. You would just take your own benefit at that time. And then, okay, survivor benefits. Not as much fun to talk about because that obviously means that someone has passed away. But let's take a look at survivor benefits. So the first and most important thing, the survivor benefit is based on the earnings of the person who died. So in the case where the one spouse may have been a stay-at-home spouse, their survivor benefit is fully based on the deceased's benefit. The reduced survivor benefit can be claimed as early as age 60. So you can take a reduced survivor benefit 2 years earlier than you can claim a traditional benefit, but just like if you claimed at 62 versus waiting for your full retirement age, you're taking a reduction each year that you file early. So if your full retirement age is 67 and you're taking a reduced survivor benefit at age 60, you're taking a 42% reduction on that benefit. So it would need to make sense for you to do that. This, though, is different. Survivor benefits are different than spousal or ex-spousal benefits because the deceased is already passed and they're not claiming a benefit or not receiving their own benefit. You get the full benefit if you're claiming it at full retirement age. So again, if your spouse has passed and you are in that retirement age bracket, you're not taking 50% of it and then a reduction if you're filing early. You're taking their benefit and taking that reduction if you're filing earlier than the full retirement age. This one is super important as well, and we may not have the benefit. My clicker just died. So this one is super important as well. If you remarry before the age of 60 and are still married when filing for benefits, you will forfeit your survivor benefit. So just in the case, like to give you an example, my dad has been remarried. So because he's remarried, he does not get, he would never qualify for my mom's survivor benefit because he's remarried. This is also super important. You can switch from survivor benefits to your own benefit or vice versa at any time. So going back to what she was asking here in the front just a little bit ago, this is the only time that you can switch from one benefit to the other. And I'm gonna explain why this reduced survivor benefit, probably a situation where that might actually make sense is if you are switching from your own benefit to someone, or I could switch from my benefit to my deceased spouse's or vice versa. So my husband and I got married right out of college. We have worked essentially the same amount of time, and oddly enough, we've made almost the same amount of money. So my benefit is very, very similar to his. If he passed away at 58 or 59 or something like that, and we had enough funds that between Social Security and any of my other investments, I could afford to not work, I could take the reduced survivor benefit at age 60. I could then wait until my full retirement age comes along and therefore my benefit has fully matured. I could then switch from the survivor benefit to my own, or vice versa. I could take mine early. If my husband's was a lot better than mine, I could take mine early and then switch to his at full retirement age too. That's one of the only times that it makes sense to take it super early, is if you've got either the ability to switch or you just have enough assets that taking it that early would not completely harm you financially. We'll get to that, but write that down on your sheet so we don't forget about that, and we'll come back to your question. Okay, this next slide, we've got this in the middle. So the Social Security Fairness Act, HR 82, concerning the windfall elimination provision as well as the government pension offset, was signed into law on January 5th. In true government fashion, though, they didn't really completely make any of that well known to everyone until like the end of March. But if you are someone that receives a public pension, meaning like a teacher, firefighter, police officer, state university retirement employee, something like that, and you qualify for, if you have the pension, but you also qualify for Social Security because you also worked in the public or the private sector, the windfall elimination provision has essentially been eliminated. So your Social Security benefit is no longer reduced. And if that applies to you, you should have already gotten a payout back until I believe they backdated it so that you received the difference of your benefits from all of 2024 and going forward in 2025. Same thing for the government pension offset. So the government pension offset, so I'm going to go back. So the windfall elimination provision is if you are the pensioner as well as your Social Security benefit. The government pension offset is if you have a spousal benefit or a survivor benefit, but you still have a pension. Again, they've essentially eliminated those things. So if that's something that applies to you, if you haven't started collecting yet, you will get your full benefit. If you are already collecting, you should have gotten a retroactive payment. But let's talk about retroactive benefits. Obviously, what I just talked about with the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset, those retroactive payments are not what we're talking about here. But so you can actually receive retroactive benefits. Not something that a lot of people know, but you can receive a lump sum of up to 6 months if you've postponed receiving your benefits past your full retirement age. So as long as you are 67, essentially, I think for most in this room, the full retirement age would be 67. So if you file at 67 and 6 months, 68, 69, anything like that, when you file, they will ask you if you would like a lump sum payment of up to 6 months. What happens is that they're giving you that benefit, but they're taking you 6 months back in time, and your benefit is going to be based on the lower amount of what it was 6 months ago. So it sounds amazing, but then you're obviously taking that reduced monthly payment for the rest of your life, essentially. So it doesn't always make sense. If you've waited, there's typically a reason that you waited. So you're not, a lot of people that have gone beyond that aren't necessarily interested in that retroactive payment. And also, retroactive benefits are not available for any month prior to your full retirement age. So again, if your full retirement age is 67, and you're filing at 66 and 6 months, that won't be a conversation that they even have with you. Withdrawal of benefits. Again, not a super widely discussed topic, but you can actually withdraw your benefits or withdraw your application, so to speak, within 12 months of your original filing if you file early and you decide, you know what, I've gotten a different job, I don't need the income anymore, or my job now, like I got a raise and I don't want to have to worry about the penalty for working and earning. I can withdraw my applications as long as I am within 12 months of originally filing. So you do have to pay back the gross amount that you received at the time of filing. So it's not a light decision to make. And the gross amount, because if you do have taxes withheld or if you have Medicare withheld, it's really the gross amount, not the net. So you have to pay that back in a lump sum, and you can only do it one time. So if you file at 62, do a withdrawal at 62 and a half, and then wait again to file until 67, and then think about withdrawing. You cannot withdraw the second time. You can only withdraw the first time. So it's just important to make sure that you are wanting to file, and it does make sense for you when you are putting in the original application. Next, cost of living adjustments. I kind of alluded to it a few minutes ago, but typically each year around November, we hear what the cost of living adjustment for Social Security will be for the next year. I always like to point out, if we had a full chart and 1980 was on here, when I was born, it was in the double digits. I think it was like 14 or something. But in 1990, it was 5.4%. 98 was only 1.3. 2008 was 5.8, but we all remember those very low interest rate years, 2009, 2010, and 2015, where there was not a cost of living increase. Everyone also remembers 2023 when it was 8.7. This last year it was 2.5. Based on what we're hearing about inflation and all of those things, I don't expect it to be much different than than what the 2025 number was. But each year you do, unless there's a zero, you do get a cost of living increase on your Social Security benefit. So definitely something to look forward to. However, I'm sure everyone can think about the fact that Part B is taken out of your Social Security benefit once you are on Medicare and also receiving Social Security. The other thing that typically gets a cost of living increase that is pretty accurate to the 2.5% that you get in your increase in Social Security is Medicare. So Medicare premiums went, like Part B before the IRMA limit, went from $179 a month to $185 a month, or I'm sorry, it was $174 and it's now $185. So you can see that there's going to be a difference in your Medicare as well as your supplements and things like that. If you have any questions with Medicare, Lisa here in the front in the bright pink so you can't miss her, is actually a Medicare insurance agent. If you have any Medicare questions, she would be happy to answer them before you leave tonight. Okay, so I've kind of talked about this a couple of times, but collecting Social Security while working will actually, depending on your age, there could be a penalty. So any year less than your full retirement age, you have a cap on what you can earn before they're going to penalize your Social Security benefit. Which I know sounds crazy unfair, but that's, I think, how they encourage you to wait as long as possible to file your benefit. So if you are under your full retirement age, so essentially 62 to 66, and you are working and you're thinking about collecting, if you earn more than $23,400, they are going to withhold $1 for every 2 that you are over that limit. So if, for instance, you make $40,000 a year and you're going to collect Social Security as well, but you are between the ages of 62 to 66, you are going to have that, or they are going to withhold $1 for every 2 that you're over. Just for easy math, I'm going to take this number down to 23,000. So if you're earning 40, that means that you're $17,000 over the limit, which means that if I'm going to take that in half, that would be $8,500 that they're going to take out of my Social Security benefit, which means if I earn $2,000 a month from 62 on, they are going to withhold my benefit in January, February, March, April, and part of May. Then June and beyond, I would get my full benefit, but that is a substantial amount for them to withhold from your benefit if you're still working. Because obviously if you start your benefit also at the earlier age, you're locking in a lower number. So it really has to make sense to collect and be earning at the same time. In the year of your full retirement age, they give you a lot more grace as far as what you earn and and also the penalty. So in the year of your full retirement age, you can earn up to $62,160. And instead of $1 for every 2 that you're over, they're going to withhold, it's $1 for every 3. So you've got a lot more flexibility in the 12 months prior to you filing Social Security. However, if you've made it that far, if you can just hold on till the month that you turn your full retirement age, you can earn as much as you would like, as well as collect your benefit, and there's no penalty at all. So if you're like 66 and 6 months, and you're like, can I make it just a little bit farther? If you start collecting at 67 at your full retirement age, you can earn as much as you want and collect Social Security with no penalty. There's still taxes, which we'll talk about in just a second. They're not gonna, obviously there's still taxes, or at least currently there's still taxes. But you would at least be able to retain 100% of your benefit, which this is super important, or also a strategy to think about if you maybe don't have as much in savings as you would like, but you are still working. If you plan to work until 70, but you don't have as much in savings as you would like, it is not a terrible idea to think about filing and socking that money away, because your full retirement age benefit for the next 3 years is quite a lot of money, or it can be. So that is a strategy to think about. If your savings isn't what you want, but you're still working, you might want to think about filing at your full retirement age, just depending on what the situation is. So the next, and again, I told you guys it's the most, everyone's favorite, the federal taxation of Social Security benefits. So your Social Security is taxed based on your provisional income, which is probably a new term for some people in this room. So let's talk about what the provisional income is. Your provisional income is your adjusted gross income. They add back non-taxable interest, so that would be like municipal bond interest. They add that back in the equation even though you don't pay federal taxes on it. And then also half of your Social Security benefit. So if you're thinking about a tax return, the line that you claim the Social Security income on is never going to be the same. The amount that you earn in Social Security and the amount that's taxable is always going to be different because you're going to be in one of three categories. You're either going to be in a situation where your Social Security income is tax-free, you're going to be in up to 50% Social Security taxation, or you're going to be in up to 80, I'm sorry, that's not 50% of your Social Security is taxed, it's 50% of the income is taxable, or you're going to be in a situation where up to 85% of your income is taxable. So let's look at that. So for a single head of household or married filing separately, if your provisional income is lower than $25,000 annually, you don't pay taxes on your Social Security. For married filing jointly, it's not a lot more, but if your provisional income is $1,000, again, you do not pay taxes on your Social Security. For a single head of household, married filing separately, up to 50% of your Social Security income is going to be taxable if you're between $25,000 to $34,000 of annual provisional income. Married filing jointly, the gap is $32,000 to $44,000. Then for single head of household or married filing separately, any provisional income above $34,000 means that your Social Security is going to be taxed to 85% of your Social Security benefit would be taxable. And for married couples, anything above $44,000, again, up to 85% of your Social Security income is going to be taxable. And just to recap, provisional income includes the sum of wages, taxable and non-taxable interest, dividends, pensions, self-employment, and other taxable income, plus half of your Social Security benefits. So we're going to look at an example because I feel like I'm an example type of person. So this makes everything just a little bit more concrete. So both couples, we're looking at both couples here because we obviously have to compare apples to apples. Both couples, though, come away with $67,000 of actual income each year. However, the sources of their income, as you can tell, are different. So that's what makes one couple's income a lot more taxable than the other. So couple one receives $5,000 from taxable interest income from CDs, $10,000 from dividends, $5,000 from tax-free bond income, so again, a municipal bond, $25,000 from a traditional IRA, and then $22,000 again from the Social Security benefit. Again, we take half of the Social Security benefit, so we're going to take $11,000 off of that, and that is how we get to $56,000 for couple one for their provisional income. That means, again, that 85% of that $22,000 is taxable. So about $18,000 to $18,500 is what they're paying taxes on. And their tax bracket would probably be about 12%. So they're going to pay about $2,000, maybe $2,200 in taxes on their Social Security. If we look at couple two, they have very similar income with one big difference. So again, interest income from CDs, $5,000. Dividend income, $10,000. Tax-free bond interest income, again, $5,000 from municipal bonds. But instead of coming out of a traditional IRA, they're taking their income from a Roth IRA. So they are not paying federal tax on that money. And again, we're going to take $11,000 off of that Social Security dollar amount, which means that their provisional income is $31,000 and it slides right under that limit. Does that make sense? Okay. So I know we've discussed a lot of information and we'll get to the questions in just a second, but because we've discussed a lot, I'm sure you still have some questions. We offer a consulting session to answer your individual retirement needs. We can kind of customize everything to you. So we offer a 1-hour consulting session free of charge as long as it is booked within 14 days of this seminar. It is valued at $425, but again, it is a complimentary consulting session for you. We're looking to uncover your tax planning opportunities for your retirement, as well as explore your Social Security filing options. We would ask that you would bring your Social Security benefit statement, investment account statements, as well as your most recent tax return. You can use this card to fill out and give it back to me, or also use this QR code. I am going to take questions, but I'm sweating a little bit, so I'm going to sit, and we can start with any questions that anybody has.
If anyone has any questions in person, just remember to, there we go. I love a good memory.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, just speak here, so, I got it. You just
Okay,
go about top.
on the slide where you stated you have collecting your full retirement, plus you can work, I thought that there would be a reduction in your Social Security benefits if you worked.
So beyond your full retirement age, there is no reduction in your benefit. So again, if you file prior to 60, so again, this column is really for 62 to 66. Oh, have you not filed yet?
I just filed.
So you should get the 6 months.
I debated, so I didn't, I only took 2 months.
So for you, if you can call them back, I would, because you're not, once you've reached 70, your benefit doesn't continue to increase.
The problem was, it's so difficult to get a hold of Social Security.
Oh, I know.
And
Yeah.
when I finally did, that person I spoke to could not answer that question because I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Everything I looked at, they all talked about rolling back the time period.
Yeah.
But nobody talked about anybody that was above 70 or 72
Yeah.
or 73. So the question was never answered.
Yeah.
Of course, I felt, okay, they're going to roll it back to.
They
I
should.
was thinking 8%. I would have rolled back 8%.
So-
But
You shouldn't really get any rollback beyond, if you're at 72, it doesn't, I mean, you would have, I don't know if they would take cost of living into consideration, but you don't get those increases beyond age 70, so you should be able to get that 6 months and not have any effect. And again, because you're beyond your full retirement age, you don't have to worry, you're gonna pay taxes,
right,
but you don't have any reductions.
okay. That makes sense now. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
1 second.
It was back to the survivor benefits.
Yeah, okay.
Was there a minimum years you had to be married?
As long as you're married, so just with spousal benefits as well, as long as you've been married for at least one, you qualify for the spousal, which means that you would also qualify for the survivor.
If you were married 5 years before. Yes.
So then you don't qualify for the ex-spousal, yeah.
Well, no, it was the deceased.
Right, but so if you are no longer married, so if you qualify for the spousal and they pass away, but that means that you're still married. If you qualify for the spousal because you were married when they passed, then you get their survivor benefit. For ex-spousal, you can still get the survivor benefit, but you have to have been married for 10 years.
But if they die when you're married, it doesn't matter, you've only been married 5 years.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, yep. Hold on 1 second.
Does the government have a calculator on their website for calculating the break-even point like you showed on the screen with the chart?
I don't think so. So, yeah. Yeah, I don't think they do. That is one thing I've not looked for, but I personally have logged on and have my own user ID and password, and that's not anything that I've ever seen. But the consulting appointment, if you are interested in that, we discuss all the pros and cons and just go through any other questions and things like that. So some of those things, while you could do the calculation on your own, to have another party that is fully informed of all of those things, just to talk back and forth, sometimes it's super helpful.
Yeah, then just, they pointed out the government's not very helpful.
No, they're not.
You wait on the phone.
Yeah.
Not get much help.
No, they're less than helpful.
My question is for the survivor benefit. You had a slide about filing for like retro. I'm collecting spousal Social Security, and because my normal retirement age was in April, and because I couldn't switch over until June, they were going to retro that back to my original.
So were you collecting your own benefit and then?
I was collecting the spousal.
Okay, but then the spouse passed?
Yeah, the spouse had passed. I've been collecting on his for several years. They were going to retro it, but you said that I
When did he
would,
pass?
pardon?
When did the spouse pass? Was that April?
No, he passed away back in December 2008. But I couldn't collect on his because I wasn't
Because you
six.
weren't 60.
I wasn't 60.
Got it, okay.
But when they switch over to mine, I know what mine's going to be, and they're going to retro. But there was a slide saying they would go back to the, will I still get my full Social Security? Because you showed a slide that it would go back to the original amount. Does that mean original, what I was collecting on his, or will it stay at mine?
I'm not sure. I think I would need you to come in for a consulting appointment so that we can actually look at figures. Because I'm not sure that I don't know that I'm tracking your question properly. So come in for that consulting appointment and I would be able to answer your question a little bit more
Okay.
thoroughly, I think.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if it would be retro or if,
I don't think so. I don't think it would be retroactive because I think it would go to, like, if you're switching over to your own benefit, you're gonna switch, like, you wouldn't probably wait much beyond 67 when your benefit has matured.
Right.
So I do not believe so, but come in and we'll get that answer for
Okay.
you.
All right, so we're at a little after 8, so I want to make sure I'm respectful of everyone online and of course here and Stacy's time as well. So I want to thank everybody so much for coming in and being with us today and for joining us online. I'm sure Stacy and Lisa, oh, I was going to say that too. Yes, I'm usually terrible with names. And Lisa are happy to answer any questions for anyone in person if you want to stick around for a little bit. But from all of us here at the Schaumburg Library, thank you so much for joining us. For all of our friends who are here and online, this presentation was recorded, and we'll be sending out a link of that recording to you within the next hour or so. So thank you everybody so much for joining us. You have a great rest of your evening. Safe travels. Good night, everyone.